Coming up on this Tuesday edition of Daybreak, the Sydney hostage situation comes to a sudden and violent end. A pre-dawn shootout leaves the gunman and 2 hostages dead after a 16-hour siege. Allegations that President Park Geun-hye's aides have been meddling in state affairs take centre stage at the National Assembly on the first day of an extraordinary session. Plus, amid growing international pressure over its human rights issues, North Korea warns the United States that it will bear sole responsibility for the breakdown of denuclearization efforts on the Korean peninsula. Daybreak begins now. Hello and thanks for joining us. To our viewers around the world, it's 6 a.m. on Tuesday, December 16th here in Seoul. I'm Mark Broome and you're tuned in to Daybreak. And our top story this morning, the siege on a chocolate shop in Sydney's business centre is over, although not without loss of life, unfortunately. For the latest, let's connect to Eunice Kim at the news centre. Good morning, Eunice.
Hello, Mark.
So, we heard yesterday that the police wanted to bring an end to this siege peacefully, but after 16 tense hours, there was a swift and bloody end to this crisis. The gunman and 2 hostages died. Most of the others did escape without serious injuries, although obviously very shaken up and distressed. What's the latest?
Well, Mark, New South Wales Police Commissioner Andrew Scipione did come out to tell the public this morning that there were 3 dead in that police raid conducted around 2 a.m. local time. That's about midnight here in Korea. And without giving much tactical detail, he said forces went in when it was determined that further delay would mean more lives lost. A barrage of gunfire in the early hours of Tuesday. Police stormed that cafe when a loud bang was heard from the inside and hostages ran out. Police say there were 17 people held inside. A man and women in their 30s were pronounced dead at the hospital. It is unclear whether they were killed by crossfire or by the gunman himself. Now, the gunman, Iranian-born Manharan Monis, was shot dead. Commissioner Scipione said 5 people were hospitalized from that confrontation. A bomb disposal robot was also sent into the building, though no explosives were immediately found. Negotiations had been ongoing with the gunman as police and bomb squad flooded that central business district Monday morning. Martin Place houses the state premier's office as well as the headquarters of the 2 of the country's largest banks. And as you saw there, 5 hostages, 3 men and 2 women, including the Korean-American Lint staff member, were seen escaping from that hostage site through the cafe's fire exit in the 4 p.m. hour yesterday, or about 6 hours after the gunman took hold of the cafe.
Yeah, and the hostages look obviously extremely terrified running out of that chocolate shop.
Right.
Now, we're receiving new details about this gunman, Manharan Monis. He was apparently sympathetic to the group that calls itself Islamic State, although he doesn't seem like he was a formal member.
Right. Authorities are calling this a lone wolf attack. His former lawyer told local media that this was not a concerted terrorism event, but an act by one individual whose common sense was clouded by an extremely strong ideology. Reports say the Iranian refugee had recently converted to Sunni Islam from Shia Islam and was out on bail on charges of sexual assault. He was also known to authorities as a self-styled religious leader or sheikh, though he had no followers. He was sentenced to 300 hours of community service back in 2012 after he had sent grossly offensive letters to families of soldiers killed in Afghanistan. He was also charged last year with being an accessory to the murder of his ex-wife, so certainly a man with a rap sheet that authorities had known about.
Yeah, that's certainly true there, given the details you just mentioned. And what's challenging about this strike is that it is, like you say, believed to have been a lone wolf attack. And I understand there is one US official who is warning that more of these kind of terror attacks, hostage situations, could be on the horizon.
Yeah, and this is coming from Michael Morrell. He's a former CIA deputy director. On Monday, as this situation was unfolding in Australia, he told an American morning show that the U.S. should be readying itself for a lone wolf terrorist attack, and he gave a time frame within the next year. He was pretty confident about it, too, using words like guaranteed. He said that while it is difficult to prevent these types of lone wolf attacks, intelligence officials, he said, can look to social media chatter for clues.
Okay, Eunice, thank you very much for all your updates, and you'll be following the developments on this story throughout the morning for us. Thank you.
Sure thing.
Now, in the rest of the day's news, the first day of the National Assembly's extraordinary session was dominated by recent allegations that some of President Park Geun-hye's aides have been abusing their influence in the government. And with President Park losing public support over this scandal, the National Assembly Speaker actually launched into some rather fierce criticism of the president's communication skills. Choi Yoo-sun reports.
During an interpellation session Monday, Prime Minister Chung Eung-won flatly turned down allegations that neither President Park's brother Ji-man nor her former aide Chung Yun-hye could ever have the power or connections to call the shots behind the scenes. The opposition party claimed one of President Park's secretaries had failed to report a leaked document on her brother and his family back in May.
If the accounts of documents leaks to the president's brother were reported to the president, we could have prevented further leaks. Why was it ignored? Why was it abandoned?
The prosecution is currently investigating how the documents were leaked, including who made an account of the leaks.
The 8 allegations have complicated matters for the rival parties, which had agreed on a month-long extraordinary session to pass a list of economy-related bills. Meeting with the top 3 members of the cabinet, National Assembly Speaker Chung Eui-hwa also cast worries about President Park's lack of communication with the parliament. Chung said the president should actively communicate with the parliament for the good of the nation, adding if the president is seeking parliamentary support to pass economy-related bills, she should make the request herself either by phone or in person at her office. While President Park remained tight-lipped, pollster Realmeter said her support rating dropped nearly 7 percentage points, hitting the 30% range for the first time since she took office early last year. Negative feedback on how the president is running the country, on the other hand, jumped more than 6 percentage points to record 52%. Choi Yoo-sun, Arirang News.
And while we're on that story, President Park's brother, Ji-man, who is another heavyweight alleged to be in rivalry with Chung Yun-hye, appeared for questioning on Monday. Prosecutors confirmed that back in May, Park met with a reporter who broke this story. They also probed him about his links to the so-called Group of Seven, which is alleged to have created the documents that say Chung has been exercising influence over the running of state affairs. Meanwhile, President Park Geun-hye has been attending to yet another controversy. She made it clear on Monday that she wants the 2018 Winter Olympic Games to be held in Korea's alpine town of Pyeongchang and Pyeongchang alone. In a meeting with senior presidential secretaries, President Park said holding events outside of Pyeongchang was out of the question, since construction of the venues has already begun. She added that Korea has put too much effort into 3 bids to host the Winter Games in Pyeongchang just to let it go to waste. The International Olympic Committee last week suggested Korea consider holding certain events outside the country in an attempt to cut costs. The South Korean government has approved an opposition party lawmaker's visit to the north to deliver a wreath commemorating the third anniversary of the death of North Korea's late leader Kim Jong-il. The South's Unification Ministry says Representative Park Geun-hye from the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy will travel to the border town of Kaesong later on this Tuesday. Park will be joined by 6 other delegates from the Kim Dae-jung Peace Center in Seoul. He will deliver the wreath in the name of Hyo, the widow of late South Korean President Kim Dae-jung. The Unification Ministry, however, cautioned against overanalyzing the visit. North Korea has warned the United States that it alone will have to bear the responsibility for a breakdown in efforts to denuclearize the Korean peninsula as international pressure mounts on Pyongyang over its human rights issues. The North's Foreign Ministry also says Washington will face the most severe counteraction for its offensive policy towards the North. These comments suggest Pyongyang could conduct another nuclear test. The warning comes a matter of days after the US Congress passed a bill calling for a full-blown probe into North Korea's political prison camps. Now, North Korea this week does observe the third anniversary of the death of former North Korean leader Kim Jong-il. Ahead of the event, the regime has stated that the true era of the current leader Kim Jong-un, the son of Kim Jong-il, is going to begin. Hwang Sang-hee reports.
North Korea has pledged to open a new era under Kim Jong-un's leadership. Ahead of the 3-year anniversary of the death of former leader Kim Jong-il, the state-run Nodongshinmun newspaper on Sunday said the last 3 years had been sacred and passed like a hot fireball. Listing the young Kim's Pyeongjin line, or the dual development of nuclear arms and the economy, and major construction projects, it labeled the last 3 years as historic, during which time the regime had become prosperous, both ideologically and materially. Pyongyang remains isolated from the world, but it has made strides in its military capabilities. North Korea has been increasing its accuracy rate of missiles through constant test firings, launching 111 missiles through 19 rounds this year. A senior South Korean military official says North Korea is running 30 nuclear-related institutions like nuclear power plants, and speculates Pyongyang possesses around 20 nuclear weapons, which is more than double the amount from a few years ago. Another official notes the North is close to being capable of attaching a miniaturized nuclear device on a Scud missile that could reach all corners of the Korean peninsula. Experts say North Korea's confidence level is higher than ever when it comes to war readiness, and that the regime could go ahead with a 4th nuclear test next year if things don't go their way on the diplomatic front. Hwang Sang-hee, Arirang News.
The last remaining symbol of inter-Korean cooperation, the Kaesong Industrial Complex, celebrates the 10th anniversary of its opening this month. But, as our Connie Kim reports, the joint factory park is still a very long way off reaching its full potential.
In December 2004, 1,000 pots were the first things to roll off the production line at the inter-Korean Kaesong Industrial Complex. Since that day 10 years ago, the complex has grown beyond all recognition. In the early days, there were just 15 South Korean businesses. Now, there are more than 120. The increase in the number of North Koreans is even more startling, jumping from 6,000 to well over 50,000 today. In terms of its economic benefits to the Koreas, South Korea has raked in more than $3 billion, while the North has brought in some $380 million since 2004. Now, that's not to say the Kaesong complex hasn't had its bumps along the way. The park is currently spread over some 3.3 million square kilometers. That might sound big, but that's just 5% of the original plan laid out. And just last year, Pyongyang unilaterally halted operations for 5 months amid heightened inter-Korean tensions. Despite the obstacles and unresolved issues, analysts say the industrial park is priceless in many ways.
The inter-Korean Kaesong Industrial Complex is a place that goes beyond merely learning about North Korea's market economy. It's where the two Koreas realize economic cooperation, and it's a small area where the two Koreas have reunified.
Professor Yang notes a private consortium needs to be established for the two Koreas to push for the globalization of the Kaesong complex. Now, if the joint park ever reaches its full potential, watchers say it could bring in over $68 billion worth of benefits for both Koreas. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
We start before the sun rises to bring you the latest stories out of Korea. We also lead the way with important global coverage. Stay on the pulse of what is happening with Daybreak.
Now, Japan's recent snap general election saw Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's Liberal Democratic Party and their coalition partner increase their majority in Japan's lower house. The victory has given Abe the mandate he needed, really, to pursue his nationalist agenda, which is almost certain to further antagonize China and Korea. Lee Ji-eun reports.
Will Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe try to mend relations with Korea and China? Experts are not very hopeful. They say because Abe won in overwhelming fashion on Sunday, he's likely to forge ahead with his right-wing agenda. Abe denies that Japan forced Korean women into sexual slavery during its colonial rule of the Korean peninsula. This has angered the Korean government, which continues to ask for an official apology and compensation for the victims. Politicians within Abe's ruling party have also denied the 1937 Nanjing massacre, in which tens of thousands of Chinese civilians were killed by invading Japanese soldiers. The list goes on. His repeated visits of Yasukuni Shrine that honors Japanese war criminals, false claims to Korea-controlled Dokdo Island in the East Sea, and efforts to revise the post-war constitution to militarize Japan. Experts say, though, that Japan does realize Korea and China as important economic and political partners, which means there's still a chance Abe might try a bit harder to deal with existing problems. As for now, eyes are on what Abe will say and do during the 70th anniversary of the end of the Second World War next year, and whether he will visit the Yasukuni Shrine again or offer a sincere apology for Japan's wartime atrocities. Lee Ji-eun, Arirang News.
And staying with the ripple effect from Abe's election triumph, and something that is also here to stay now is the Prime Minister's economic policies, which are dubbed Abenomics. For more on the global impact of these policies and also how they'll affect Korean exporters, Connie Lee reports.
Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's election win enables the leader to push on with Abenomics, his set of aggressive fiscal and monetary expansionary policies.
You know, we're talking about 1, 2, 3 years for certain reforms to come through, and I think that gives him a strong mandate.
But the stronghold of Abenomics is expected to hurt Korean producers and exports. Bank of Korea Governor Hyo Joo says that if Japanese firms start cutting prices on the backdrop of improved profits and financial structures, Korean products could face declining sales. Analysts say the value of the Japanese yen against the US dollar, the Korean won, and other currencies could continue to weaken and make Korean exports more expensive in the global market. This is bad news for Korean firms that compete with Japanese companies. So some advise that local businesses should strengthen their product competitiveness and invest more in their R&D during this time. The Prime Minister's Abenomics agenda was first introduced in 2012 to boost the economy, and despite controversy over its effects, it could stay as long as Abe stays in power, possibly until 2018. Connie Lee, Arirang News.
And a good Tuesday morning to you all as we kick things off with the ongoing issue with the 2018 Pyeongchang Winter Games. And with several ideas being pushed, the latest idea has the South and North Korea co-hosting the event. Now, the Tangun National Peace and Unification Council, which represents 120 civic groups, pushed the idea of having both Koreas host the 2018 Winter Games, stating that it will be cost-saving. Now, with the nation against the idea of Korea and Japan co-hosting the Winter Games, the civic group added that an inter-Korean Winter Games will greatly contribute to the peace in the peninsula and increase the chance of unification. And now shifting over to domestic football, as the president of the KFA, Chung Mong-gyu, held a luncheon on Monday along with 5 K-League Classic managers. And there, Chung Mong-gyu talked about improving the quality of the domestic league, asking for the coaches to play a more aggressive football in order to entertain the fans. With the average goals per match at 2.22 goals this year, it went down from 2.55 goals last year. As the head of the KFA added that the K-League Classic was too defense-oriented. Despite the total goals going down, the attendance did rise in 2014, averaging nearly 300 more fans per match this season compared to the 2013 season. And speaking of more offense, with the week-long training session in Jeju beginning on Monday for the Korean national football team, offense was the focus for manager Uli Stilke as the head coach held a brief press conference in Jeju. And just like it was expected, the biggest focus of the 6-year-old head coach was the offense, as the team is without Lee Dong-guk and Kim Shin-wook due to injuries. And with the forward position up for grabs, he stated that he'll focus on the goal scoring during the week-long training. He added that no one is guaranteed a spot on the Asian Cup team, including Cha Do-ri, who is expected to retire from the national team after the Asian Cup. Now, we're a little more than 2 weeks away until the new year, but can say that 2014 was certainly the year of Kim Hyo Joo. After an impressive victory over at the Chinese Women's Open over the weekend, she was able to receive prize money in all 27 events that she competed in this season. Now, of the 27 events, she finished top 10 in 22 of the events and won 7 for a 26% winning percentage. Now, currently ranked 8th in the latest world rankings, she's expected to compete in more events next year, as fans are already looking forward to her 2015 season. And now finishing things off in the NBA, if there's one thing many kids dream of, it's being like Mike, as in Michael Jordan. And on Sunday night, Kobe Bryant, who looked up to Michael Jordan himself, surpassed him for number 3 in all-time scoring. With the LA Lakers facing off against the Minnesota Timberwolves, the Black Mamba nails 2 free throws to surpass Michael Jordan for 3rd in all-time scoring, finishing the game at 32,293 points in his career. Now, Kobe still trails 2 others, with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Karl Malone ahead of him in the list. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day, and see you guys again for your sports needs.
Good morning, I'm Lee Ji-yeon here with your latest weather updates. Now, snow and rain fell across the nation overnight, but it's not snowing right now here in the capital. But we did receive 3.5 centimeters of snow, but thankfully it didn't pile up out on the roads. And as we can see, rain clouds are gradually moving out from the peninsula, but still dropping showers to some regions, but it eventually will all go away by the lunch hour. Then the cold wave sweeps in again, and wind chill will be adding a chill to the air, mostly to upper parts of the peninsula, bringing down the daily highs to negative side here in the capital. So with that in mind, let's take a closer look at the readings for today. Now, the low in Seoul is kicking off at -4, then the afternoon temperature will remain cold at -4, and Daegu and Gwangju will peak at 5 and 3, while Busan should top out at 6 this afternoon. Now, let's see how other regions are looking. It looks like Jeju Island and Dokdo will be getting up to 7, and Daejeon will see highs of 0, while Mount Gyeongang will be freezing cold throughout the day. Again, drive with extra caution out on the slippery roads this morning. And that's all for Korea. And here's the international weather for viewers around the world.
Well, that's going to do it for now. Korea Today is coming up at the top of the hour. Have a fabulous day. Goodbye.